West College Football Podcast, joined as always by Clinton Boring. My name is Ryan Satkoviak. We are here with a special Monday night edition for you guys. Short week this week. One Big Ten game to worry about this weekend, so not a full preview. We will save our Big Ten preview for Thursday night. So this felt like a good opportunity to briefly talk about the coaching carousel, which is spinning full bore now over the last 48 hours or so here with the regular season officially over. We have some things to talk about, and then we'll talk about the penultimate playoff ranking that will come out tomorrow night that could mean a lot, meant a lot last year. And we'll kind of talk about what to look for and some other things. Clinton, sir, how are you tonight?
I would be doing better if the Patriots would give Travion Henderson a carry inside the 10 so I can get a touchdown. Other than that, pretty good. Got home from work tonight. The youngest, Owen, came right up to me and asked if we could go ride in the car and look at Christmas lights. So that's what we did for about 45 minutes. Came home, made dinner. Kids are somewhat asleep now. I don't know. And I'm looking forward to discussing this coaching carousel a little bit with you. It's been absolute chaos since Penn State fired James Franklin, and it's just continued to build from there. And then I have a few questions for you about the potential playoff scenarios tomorrow night. Mr. Ryan, how are you?
Oh, just happy to be here, man. I feel like this carousel's not as crazy as it was built up to be initially. Lane Kiffin aside, because that whole circus was its own thing that has been going on now, it feels like, for 2.5 weeks, and I would just like to never hear about it again. But, I mean, I feel like Penn State still holds a big portion of this, and they're still obviously the big white whale on the board here, and we'll get to them here in a second. But really, for the most part, man, we haven't had a lot of P4 to P4 movement to this point. Obviously, Lane Kiffin is the only exception, but for the most part, it's been pretty clean with programs promoting from the G5 ranks or hiring coordinators or hiring guys who weren't even in college football this year. So the chain reaction isn't going to be like it was 4 years ago, at least yet, when Lincoln Riley went from Oklahoma to USC and Brian Kelly went from Notre Dame to LSU. But so far, man, it's been interesting, I guess, to say the least here. And the Midwest has definitely been affected by it so far. We have two new head coaches in the Big Ten. We have a coordinator leaving the Big Ten. So we'll start talking about those tonight. Obviously, the big story in the Big Ten, not to outshine the Lane Kiffin news too much, was Michigan State fired Jonathan Smith and within 24 hours hired Pat Fitzgerald, the former Northwestern head coach who has been out of football for the last 2 years while litigation with the university surrounding his termination was resolved. I believe mid-season that came to fruition and almost immediately was reported. Look for Pat Fitzgerald in the coaching carousel this year. Someone is going to hire him. Clinton, with how quickly this seemingly came together, it feels like, and I have no intel or inside information on this, but it definitely feels like something that has been in the works.
Yeah, and that's the same census that some of the more national podcasts and writers have been talking about, that clearly Michigan State has been behind the scenes setting something up with Pat Fitzgerald for multiple weeks now. It's expensive for Michigan State right now. They are still paying Mel Tucker, and they're going to be paying Jonathan Smith, and they're going to be paying Pat Fitzgerald. I didn't see the details on that. Was it 3 or 5 years, Ryan?
I have no idea. I didn't see.
Fitzgerald contract. Anyways, really nice hire for them. I had noted with Fitzgerald here, 17 seasons as head coach for Northwestern. I didn't realize it was that long. I knew he was there for a period of time, but 17 years, man. His record is 110 and 101. He had 2 Big Ten title appearances, 10 bowl appearances. What I love about this is the fact that he knows the Midwest. He was an NW alum. He coached at Northwestern for a long time, and he knows the Big Ten really well, man. I think the biggest things that you got to get with this is he obviously has to be able to settle in the NIL world. Very different from when he left, essentially. And then can he adapt to, style of play has changed a little bit. It's only been a few years, but the game changes, and it changes quickly. And if he goes the route of Luke Fickell just trying to walk in and, become like a dairy raid at Wisconsin and do something so weird at Michigan State, then it may not work. But we've already seen a slight repercussion of Smith being fired. Nick Marsh entered the portal today.
Well, I
He
think
will
that was
be
probably happening anyway.
yes, but extra addition now. He's going to be a highly sought after wide receiver. I
Hmm.
don't think he had as big of a year this year as he did as his freshman year, but I think the likes of like a Michigan would be in on him, maybe Indiana. Do
I
you think he'll
think there's
stay?
some no, I think there's some stuff behind the scenes with Michigan that played out during his recruitment that might make that not.
Make that count go. All right. Well, I
At
would
least
expect
stuff that
Indiana
I've
then.
read.
Indiana's going to lose
Well,
Surratt and Cooper,
I
so they're
think
going to need to
every
replenish.
I think every top 10 program, save for maybe like Ohio State, is probably going to be in on him.
Yeah, I think there's some good shots. It's also interesting to see what other receivers enter the portal. We talk about the coaching carousel, but quick
Yep.
side note here is there's expectation that Ryan Williams and maybe Cam Coleman will also enter the portal, who are both sophomores, less than stellar sophomore years, I believe, but better freshman years, who will be in that, and that's going to command a lot of money to pull these guys. But Fitzgerald, given his experience, I think would be able to do very well for Michigan State to hopefully keep this, whatever they have as a class together, and then try to pull in a strong portal class for them. Ryan, your thoughts on the hire and just initially how you think this is going to go for them?
Well, real quick regarding the financials of it, Jonathan Smith's buyout works out to approximately $33 million due in monthly payments over the remainder of the term. However, he does have offset language in that, so if he is to get a new job and he has the best efforts clause in there, so he can't just sit on his ass and not do anything. Granted, you can pretend like you're trying to get a job and just be like, it's not the right fit, but he does have offset language, so if he does get another job, that will reduce the financial burden on Michigan State. Look, I'm not gonna sit here and act like it's just so foolhardy trying to grade these in the moment because you don't know how the coordinator hires are going to go or how is he going to fit in with the roster that's already there. How is he going to do at building the portal? My concern, I think, with Pat Fitzgerald, is a very good football coach, don't get me wrong. You don't win at the level that he did at a program such as Northwestern unless you are a very good football coach. My concern with him is being a coach at a program like Northwestern is vastly different in terms of like roster construction and management than it is at anywhere else because of one, the academic restrictions that you have, two, the transfer restrictions that you have. I don't know. I think when we had Matt Shelton on preseason talking Northwestern, he said those had maybe been relaxed a little bit, but that's still a program like a Notre Dame, lesser extent like a Vanderbilt or even like a Stanford, where you can't take every transfer that you want because the credits have to match up. So he doesn't have that same type of portal experience that you'll need at a program like Michigan State to restock the roster. And when he was fired, it was before what, the 2023 season?
Summer. Yep.
So this was like right at the advent of legal NIL. And it has changed exponentially in 2 years in terms of how you have to actually manage a roster now. Like there's a salary cap. There's money that you're paying outside of the salary cap on legitimate NIL deals. That's not just revenue sharing money. How is he going to adapt to that? I'm not going to sit here and stereotype, who he is as a program runner because again, I'm not there on the day to day, but he always kind of strikes you as kind of that hard ass, no nonsense coach that I don't know how well that plays in today's college football. So that's going to be an interesting fit, but it feels like every cycle you have that one. I wouldn't even sit here and call this a what the fuck hire because I don't think that's accurate at all. You touched on the reasons why I think it could work. He knows the Midwest. He's a good defensive coach. That's the type of culture that you need to succeed in the Big Ten, but it feels like every cycle there's that one hire where it's like, why did they do this? And it works out really well. So I'm not going to sit here and parse too much judgment on it. I think it's an interesting fit, but let's see who he hires as his coordinators and who he hires to run his offense before we sit there and make too much judgment on it.
5-year contract, by the way.
Go.
So they are investing and giving him time because they know it's going to need time. And just Smith, applaud to Jonathan Smith. He was there. It clearly didn't work out. He gave it an effort. He didn't complain about it. Here's the one key thing. You saw Virginia Tech hire James Franklin, which again maybe we'll touch on when we get to the Penn State spot here. And they immediately announced that they're going to be giving more financial backing to this NFL program, because that's essentially what it is, to this
Yeah.
college football program, to help build this roster. And that's probably something Franklin pitched to them, was like, listen, I'm coming in here and I expect this and this to happen to be able to help me build this program. And you're already seeing that. So does Michigan State have something like that to help back Fitzgerald? Because I think you're going to get a good coach out of this. But if you're not willing to be able to have a certain amount of investment in the program, it's going to be hard to be consistently good. If you
Agreed.
want to be successful in the portal, one, you need guys who need to gel together, but you're going to have to spend a little more on more of the perceived, top tier guys to maybe make it work.
As for Jonathan Smith, I wonder, Clinton, if he goes back west to be an offensive coordinator for his alma mater, leave as
Yeah.
Oregon State's head coach, go back as the offensive coordinator on
Yeah.
Jamarcus Shepard's new staff, or maybe he moves back to his hometown to be an offensive coordinator for UCLA's new coach, Bob Chesney from
Yeah.
James Madison. It worked well for Indiana. Why not try it if you're UCLA? I'm very fascinated by this hire because this felt like the guy, the Kurt Signetti of this hire, at least the guy who was dubbed as that. I kind of was looking through his like coaching record today. He's not like, he's a guy who's had success everywhere he's been. Not the same long-standing success as Kurt Signetti did, and I think Kurt Signetti had being part of that Saban tree. I think gives you a little bit of a different program building perspective than something that Bob Chesney has had in his career. But he's climbed the ranks. He's won at multiple different levels. He obviously continued what Kurt Signetti had built at James Madison, and has the Dukes in the position to potentially get into the college football playoff, depending on how certain results break out this weekend. And he's not the only coach who is leaving a potential playoff contender, which we can talk about here in a minute. But I'm fascinated by this hire. I think this might be the most fascinating hire of, well, that's not true. I'm not even going to pretend to lie about that. It is a fascinating hire this cycle. Clinton, what are your thoughts?
So I really love the Bob Chesney hire, so much so that I was calling him Bob Cheney earlier when I was talking about it at work. So, great job there, Clinton. It's a big jump again from former G5, but now, well, he is G5, sorry, former FCS program into the G5, James Madison. Chesney, on his overall career, Ryan, you mentioned he's 131 and 51. He's been from D3 to D2 to FCS and now FBS, and he has succeeded at every single stop he has been at. He's had multiple conference titles at all these levels. He's had playoff appearances at each stop. Again, not quite yet in the FBS, but as Ryan mentioned, they are sitting right on the precipice of it and may be able to pull that off if things fall right this weekend. And then I was trying to I sent Mike Regalado today to ask him what he thought about this. And he says, this gives me the warm and fuzzies for the hire for Chesney, Jesus.
Jesus
I'm
Christ.
curious, Chesney's ability to, I haven't heard anything about Nico, so I don't want to start a rumor, but we talked about this when we did the recap. Is this a way that a good enough hire to keep Nico in tow and be able to build around him for what's probably likely Nico's last year of eligibility, I would assume next year, or last year in college football? But what can they put around him to help him succeed? How many guys from JMU does he bring to the Big Ten with him, or to UCLA with him? Signetti obviously had some great success with it in year one. Indiana, again, year one had a fairly favorable schedule for his first year. I'm pulling up the UCLA football schedule now to kind of see how that matches. But I don't know if it can be quite that easy. He starts at Cal. They get San Diego State, Nevada, at Maryland, at Michigan, at Minnesota, at Oregon. Then they're home against Illinois, Michigan State, Purdue, USC, and Wisconsin. That's not a horrible
It's not
schedule
terrible.
for a team that, if you spark in the right way, I mean, if Cal will be a challenge if they keep Sagapatele, and then if they keep, I think he pronounces his last name, Raphael, the running back. But San Diego State's winnable. Nevada's winnable. Cal's winnable. Maryland, if it's in September, it might not be winnable. At Michigan won't be easy, and at Oregon. Those are your two toughest games. You don't know what Illinois is going to be. USC should be, again, that's a rivalry game, but USC is going to have a brutal schedule themselves. It could be a very interesting season for UCLA. Maybe Regalato's prediction just comes a little more to 8-4 for next year, but really good hire. I'm happy that the Bruins were able to pull this off. Do they keep anybody from the current coaching staff there? A lot of times guys like to bring their own people, so we'll see where this goes. But for now, I'd give it an A+ hire for UCLA.
I like the offense a lot too, and it's an offense that I think can potentially suit Nico well, given his proclivity for running. Matt Sluka was, I don't know if made famous is the right word, but he gained a little bit of prominence with Bob Chesney at Holy Cross before going to UNLV and then flaming out there. And then he rejoined Chesney at JMU this year, but ultimately ceded playing time to Alonzo Barnett, who had a fantastic year here, Clinton. 2,400 passing yards, 20 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, accompanied by 459 yards and 13 touchdowns on the ground. So pretty unique offense that they run there. I'm assuming he is going to bring that same attack with him to UCLA. Interested to see how that kind of transfers to the P4 level. In other news, tangentially related to the Midwest here, Oregon offensive coordinator Will Stein is going to be the next head coach at the University of Kentucky. Will Stein, a Louisville grad, but a Kentucky native, more or less going back home. So that is now the last two offensive coordinator for Dan Lanning, who now have P4 head coaching jobs, Clinton. Nope, you're muted.
I read about Stein today, and not only did you mention his Louisville ties, but both his parents are UK alums. So
There we go.
Keeping it in the family, I think it's a fantastic hire for Kentucky. Again, I was looking, kind of flirting around, seeing the schedule today because Brian Hartline was also mentioned as a potential candidate to interview tomorrow, and clearly Stein's interview went so well today, they didn't need to have one with Brian Hartline.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was trying to see here, how many years has Stein been the OC for Oregon? He was UTSA in 2020. He started at Louisville in 2013. He was at Texas 2015 to 2017. Then he went to Lake Travis High School for a period of time. Some big-time Texas football there. 2018, 2019. Then he went to UTSA, and then he joined Oregon. So here it is, December 9th, 2022. He joined Oregon staff. So he's got the proven experience, which would give him the jump as far as the next step to head coaching. If you're looking between him and Hartline, and then his ties to Kentucky, obviously, are now well known, so it should also give him a leg up, I think, over Hartline here. It'll be curious to see, and we'll get to Penn State here soon, if Penn State whiffs on this prospective guy that we hear is the front runner. Do they then turn back to Hartline to try to get something here? I was told today by Penn State fans who tweeted a 24/7 or On3 article at me that Penn State wasn't interested in Hartline. It was Hartline who was interested in them. And I'm like, I kind of find that hard to believe. But
okay, then.
We'll see about that. But overall, really good hire for UK. Tough spot for Oregon here to lose him, but Stein will coach Oregon through the playoffs as their offensive coordinator. And then he'll also be juggling dual duties, kind of similar how Tom Herman did back when Ohio State, when he took the job with Houston. Was it Houston or was it Texas? Where did he go first? I mean, Houston. Houston first.
Yes.
And then Oregon may also be without a defensive coordinator because he will be likely interviewing for the Cal job.
Yep, Tosh Lapoya, a Cal graduate. With Justin Wilcox being fired, it has been discussed that he is currently I don't know if the front runner is the correct terminology there, but one of the candidates of interest for that job.
That is an interesting scenario heading into the playoff, right? You're likely going to host a playoff game, and both your coordinators, I'm sure, are both still going to be there, but are they fully going to be there, right? They've got a job to do outside of here, which is to invest in their new team for their future to be successful. That is going to pull some mental hours away from what they should be doing to prepare for these matchups. And It'll be interesting to see how the Ducks counter with that.
Yeah, especially if it ends up being on both sides of the ball. Some people are better than that than others. Lane Kiffin was famously fired before the national championship game because he could not keep his head out of his ass coordinating Bama's offense while balancing his FAU new head coach duties. Something's never changed there, Clinton. The big one at this point, again, we kind of touched on this yesterday. LSU is filled, Florida is filled, Auburn is filled, Arkansas is filled. All of these jobs in the SEC are filling up. The first one that came open, Clinton, is still the big one that remains open. Penn State, Penn State, Penn State, Penn State. The longer this goes on, the more I'm kind of stuck between they are waiting on somebody who is deeply tied in conference championship games or playoff scenarios, or they have completely misplayed this scenario. And what you brought to my attention that Zach Seiko tweeted that Todd McShay said on a podcast today, it's starting to make me think that it's more the second one than the first one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they pull out. You have the jump start on everybody, man. And maybe you're not as desirable as you think you are. People always tell you the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Well, you're sitting there on the other side, and your grass is looking a little brown right now at Penn State.
Right. Well, in here, let me reference this tweet before we get too deep in there, because I kind of teed you up for that, and then it just went right over your head. Apparently, Todd McShay went on Bill Simmons' podcast today, and this is what Zach Seiko tweeted. So this is you hearing this through a game of telephone. McShay basically said that Jimmy Sexton has gone to war with Penn State athletic director Pat Kraft because of James Franklin being fired. So Sexton is making it practically impossible for Penn State to hire someone worthwhile. Jimmy Sexton, if you live under a rock or just don't go on the internet at all, is the Drew Rosenhaus of college football head coach agency. He represents most of the big ones. His agency is top dog. He is the power broker. He is the guy who plays these schools against themselves to get people like Brian Kelly and James Franklin massive buyouts that universities then have to pay. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that tweet before we got too deep into this.
Yeah. Chestnut checkers. I mean, he's playing the game. Is he going to burn Penn State now because of what they did to his client? Keone Satake is the named front runner right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard, man, to look at this because this is a team who's vying for a Big 12 championship, and they have to win to get into the playoff. Clearly, unless there's a change of heart tomorrow night, the committee has not felt comfortable enough with only one loss for BYU to put them in contention right now. They've essentially got to win to get in, and I know we're going to talk about the playoff here soon, but this is a guy who's in the midst of trying to get his team here, and we just saw this with not quite to the extent of, but Lane Kiffin, right? Lane Kiffin just likes to be overdramatic about everything, whereas I don't think Satake is doing that, but that's just Lane Kiffin on the whole.
I agree.
It's got to be hard. You see these other coaches, though, who are going to be able to coach their team through the playoff if they make it. Would that be something BYU's open to even doing it? The other thing, too, is Satake is a BYU alum, I believe I read. So
he is a BYU alum, and he has spent his entire coaching career essentially between like Utah and Oregon.
Yeah. And apparently his salary is like $2 to $3 million at BYU, and people were laughing and saying there are NIL deals that are bigger than his coaching deal. So that is why he'd be interested in Penn State, because he could make more money.
Well, have you seen the new update?
No.
Newish update. The Crumble Cookie CEO is apparently a massive BYU booster, and he very cryptically tweeted, "Some people are not replaceable. Guess I'm going to have to get off the sidelines." If fucking Crumble Cookie keeps this dude at BYU, I am going to laugh my ass off.
Oh, God, that would be gorgeous. Guy looks like he could put down some Crumble Cookies. I'm not going to lie.
He played offensive line, maybe? Who, the CEO or Satake?
Satake.
He's a big boy. I think he played offensive line.
He's not small.
Or defensive line.
I'd want a lifetime supply of Crumble Cookies in addition to my contract.
They are pretty good. Good. But yeah, I did see the same number that you saw regarding his BYU salary. The rumored Penn State offer is more than triple, almost quadruple that in terms of yearly pay.
Mm-hmm.
But BYU is not an institution that's hurting for money at all. I feel like they can match that if they wanted to.
Yeah,
it just comes down to, and I get this is a different situation than what Jonathan Smith went through when he left his alma mater to go to Michigan State because his alma mater was basically getting relegated to
Hmm.
G5 status. But if you're Kalani Sitake, you were in the playoff picture last year, and I think they only lost 2 regular season games, and they were on the outside looking in. And here you are now. You have 1 loss this season. You still find yourself on the outside looking in. You got to start wondering, like, what's the actual ceiling here? Because clearly it's not happening at BYU unless you go undefeated or you win your conference. So I get that if there might be frustration, not frustration with BYU, but frustration with your situation as a program in the Big 12 that's clearly not respected on the same level that a program like Penn State would be in a similar situation, that, hey, maybe if I want to take the next step in my coaching career, I have to go somewhere else to do it. So I don't know. That'll be interesting to see if we get any clarity on this over the next 48 hours or so. It sounds like there was a team meeting. May have happened, may not have happened. Sounds like there might have been a handshake deal, but then BYU came back with another. I don't know. There's going to be some twists and turns with this one, I feel like, over the next 2 days.
It's so much of a damn distraction when everything rides on your game Saturday.
Oh, sure.
You should be game planning and prepping for Texas Tech because they kicked the shit out of you
Well,
the last time you played them.
I think the issue is you can game plan and prep all you want. That's not going to close the talent gap.
Yeah, I think Texas Tech's probably going to kick their ass again. But, you know, you never know. But you would like the thought if you're a BYU fan. You don't certainly like that your coach is flirting around, you know. But it's hard when you're offered money, man. Money talks.
Listen,
talks.
if I could be the happiest motherfucker in the world at my job. If someone came and offered to quadruple my salary, I don't give a shit what project I'm working on. I don't care who I'm working with. You bet your ass I'll be like, yeah, please tell me more.
Do we have any word on what? I know it was $90 million was the rumor for LSU for Kiffin. What was Ole Miss going to counter with?
Probably the same. I think that one just came down to, do you think you can? There was, I don't remember who wrote the article today, but it was like I think it was CBS. I don't remember who wrote it, but the web interface was so bad it kicked me back to the start of the article 3 times, and I almost quit reading it halfway through. It's like, if your fucking website has so many ads, I can't even read your goddamn article. Rethink your business practice, man.
Yep. That's all freaking websites are now. The Weather Channel was horrible with that.
Oh my god! Don't get me started on the Weather Channel. Don't get me started on the Weather Channel. But basically, there were quotes within the article where there was, I don't know if it was like directly attributed to Lane or people who were close to Lane who were saying like, well, what happens if I go on like a 2-year rut here and go 6-6? Am I going to get fired then? And they were like citing what Kentucky did to Mark Stoops, firing him despite it being a not serious football program. And people were like, why are you worried about going 6-6 here? You have never won fewer than 8 games here. It was a very weird situation. I feel like he just wanted to be at LSU instead of Ole Miss.
Yeah, I agree. Doesn't his daughter date a guy from LSU? So
Whit Weeks, the linebacker.
Yeah, probably why.
Yeah, there you go.
Of any of the other coaching, Ryan, any of them that's got your, get your meter going here or your motor going here for where they're going? No. I found one interesting. Jim Moore to Colorado State after he put UConn kind of on the map. Yeah, problem is he's 64 years old, so he's not a long-term solution.
No, and it's just also, it's like Colorado State. Your ceiling is maybe you can challenge Boise for a Mountain West title.
The new Pac-12. Wow, it's the new Pac-12 now, man. No more Mountain West.
Who, again,
the Mountain 12.
You can put lipstick on a pig, Clinton. It is still
the Pac West.
A pig. Yeah. Just change it to the Western. Bring back the whack. Bring back the whack.
That shit's whack. Sorry. James Franklin is my most excited hire for Virginia Tech.
That is definitely fascinating.
He's already poaching Penn State recruits. You know damn well he's going to get his hands on players in the portal.
Yeah, I think I saw it was like they're trending towards their first top 20 class in like a decade or something like that.
Already, man.
Listen, man, the ACC is rife for the taking. There is, we'll talk about this when we get to the playoff discussion. It's a hot garbage conference. It is a conference that is closer in terms of perception to the G5 than it is the Big Ten or the SEC right now. Mm-hmm. The ACC has a massive perception problem. We will talk about that in a minute, but there's nothing in the ACC that would scare you if you're a head coach right now.
No,
like
not at
even as good as Miami has looked at times this year, they still have we're going to have 2 pants-shitting losses a year in our DNA. They have not proven that they are over that yet. Clemson sucks. They're an afterthought. Florida State's a disaster, and they're bringing back the clown of that ship. I just like, if James Franklin goes in and wins the ACC in year one, are you going to be shocked? That might be a little extreme, but I wouldn't be shocked. You get the right quarterback. He's a good coach.
Yep.
You don't have to worry about winning top 10 games in the ACC because there's no top 10 teams.
Yep. And again, less stress of expectations, right?
Sure.
Penn State and Penn State fans, as they rightfully should be, a ton of pressure on him the past few years to get something done. And he just took a Penn State team, which virtually was the same team this year, to a college football semifinal appearance. Should have been a national championship appearance if one wide receiver could catch a pass. And then they were horrible this year, and he got fired. But I absolutely love Franklin at Virginia Tech. I think, shout out to you, Kirk, if you're listening to the episode. I think your Hokies are going to be contending for an ACC championship within 2 years. If not next year, maybe the year after. They are just, it's ripe for the taking, as Ryan said. You know, I grew up, I guess, somewhat Vatech fan just because I enjoyed watching Michael Vick play. And this is certainly, I know Virginia Tech is not in the Big Ten, but going to a game there to witness Enter Sandman is on my bucket list of college football stadiums. And I'm a hell of a lot more intrigued with James Franklin there and a team that's going to be relevant than watching a team that has 3 wins. So I might have to do that one sooner than later because who knows how long James Franklin will be there.
Well, and I want to put like the proper context on this too, because this is not us saying that James Franklin is going to have Virginia Tech humming as a consistent playoff national title contender or anything like that. Talking about winning the ACC when they are pitting a 10-2 Virginia team versus a 7-5 Duke team for their conference title is not saying a lot. The bar is the floor here. And I get like the consternation, like the push-pull that happened with the discourse around his tenure at Penn State once he got fired. That was kind of nauseating too, because on the one hand, and I get the Penn State fan frustration with this. It was like, well, the national narrative about James Franklin is he can't win the big game. And then they fired him because he couldn't win the big game. And then they just completely quit on him. And everyone's like, why'd you fire him? You're going to regret firing him. And Penn State fans are like, well, you just said this dude can't win the big game. And now we're stupid for firing him. Which one is it? I think he is a good coach. I think he became a victim of his own success at Penn State. When he started there, the expectations certainly were not what they morphed into, and they morphed into that because of the job he did building that program. Sometimes you're just the guy before the guy, and I don't know if he's going to be the guy before the guy at Penn State with how that head coach search has gone, but you build the foundation, you get it in place, but you're not the right guy to get that particular job over the hump. Maybe at your next stop, little less pressure on you to start. You're kind of hitting the own reset on your, coach calendar as well. You apply the lessons that you learned later in your tenure when the pressure was a little higher and it ended up burning you. And you apply that earlier in your tenure and maybe the build goes a little bit differently and you're able to get over the hump. I don't know, but I think that's certainly an intriguing one that's going to be fun to watch next year.
Certainly.
What about you? Any other thoughts on anything else we've seen? Any thoughts that you have on, the battle that Lane Kiffin went through to try to have his cake and eat it too by coaching Ole Miss in the playoffs, or, John Summerall and Eric Morris coaching their teams in conference championship games this weekend, and then potentially the playoffs if they make it, even though they've already taken new jobs?
I think I had 2, and I think we alluded to it last night. Pete Golding instantly promoted. Again, Ole Miss might have been working this as a back channel for the past few weeks through this Lane Kiffin scenario if he were to leave.
Oh, for sure.
But they needed to have him in place and ready to go, because if you're sitting there with your caught with your hands in the cookie jar and you weren't ready, that it's possible the committee could not put you in the playoff if they deemed it big enough change to your team.
Yep.
Jump Summerall to Tulane from Tulane to Florida, I think is a fantastic addition. The question is, can Florida fans get behind another G5 coach? And
probably not.
That's what you've become, Florida. Sorry. I mean, that's not to knock Summerall, though. I think he's a really good coach, and I'm excited for the opportunity he has going into Florida. But the SEC it's a daunting task when you're currently a bottom dweller of the conference. So
true.
That is a very interesting one to me, and we'll see how that plays out. If he wins, he'll be heralded as a hero.
For
That is
sure.
for sure. If he
Absolutely.
doesn't, he's going to get about the same time span as the previous.
Yep. For sure. Clinton, let's talk about the playoff here heading into the final rankings before conference championship weekend this coming weekend. So I think we're at a point where we can say that last week's top 8 is safe, pending some sort of nonsense with the Oklahoma ranking. So the rankings on here, this is how they were ranked last week. This will change because Texas A&M lost, but the following teams: Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Georgia, Texas Tech, Oregon, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma, in my opinion, are going to be in the college football playoff, regardless of what happens this weekend. I do think that there is a universe, albeit remote, where Oklahoma gets dropped behind maybe Notre Dame this weekend, given how shitty they looked last weekend. I don't think it's going to happen. I also didn't think Alabama would be behind Notre Dame when they moved them back there, so I have no idea. But I'm operating under the impression that Oklahoma will be safe. So that is your top 8. Now, that leaves 4 spots left in the playoff field. 2 of those are definitively spoken for. One of them is going to be a conference champion at the G5 level. The other is going to be a conference champion, potentially the ACC. Could also be another G5 team. One of the big, and this is why I wanted to kind of have this conversation tonight, is because there's still this misconception that exists about the college football playoff that the 5 conference auto bids are your 4 P4 conferences and 1 G5. That is not how this works. It is the 5 highest ranked conference champions. We find ourselves in a position because of the ACC's idiotic tiebreaker rules where we have a 7-5 Duke team playing for the conference title. If Duke is able to upset Virginia in the ACC title game, they will be 8-5. They were not receiving any votes in any poll this week. There is a scenario where Duke remains unranked in the committee's final rankings, and if JMU wins their conference title game against Troy, and North Texas wins their conference title game against, I forget who they're playing off the top of my head, North Texas. No, North Texas is playing Tulane. I guess either of those teams. If Tulane beats North Texas or North Texas beats Tulane, there's a chance. Well, Tulane's already ranked, but there's a chance that either both of those teams, whoever wins that game, is ranked. So if you have JMU as a conference champion ranked, and let's just say Tulane is a conference champion ranked, and Duke as a conference champion is unranked, the ACC will not get a team in the playoff. It will be 2 G5 teams in there. That would be insane.
You know what? At this point, I'd rather see JMU and Tulane or North Texas get in there because I don't want to see Duke in the playoff because I think those two would be better representatives than what Duke would be. Duke doesn't play defense.
I got to tell you, if we get 2 G5 teams in the playoff and both of those games are boat races in the first round, there's going to be another significant batch of playoff tomfoolery rule changing in the offseason to make sure that does not happen again.
Well, Ryan, it's not going to matter because they already extended their date. They were supposed to be done by December 5th on a decision for what they were going to do, and they delayed the date. And so when Texas gets left out, and let's say Notre Dame and Miami or whoever gets left out, Vanderbilt gets left out, there's just no way this team should be in and that team should be in. They're going to put the shit to 24 just to shut everybody up.
Well, here, if the ACC gets completely left out of the playoffs, you bet your ass Jim Phillips is going to be signing on to Tony Petitti's dumbass 4-4-2-2-1-1 whatever fucking thing that he was pushing that has been.
Well, that was for 16, so apparently 14 and 16 are gone. It's 24 or it stays the same.
I don't want a 20. Clinton, I will not watch college football if there's a 2014 playoff during the regular season. There's literally no point. My team will be in the playoff every year.
You will watch it, and you know you will.
I fucking so
dumb.
You
won't like the end result, but you know you'll watch it.
So we know that the 11 and 12 seed are going to be spoken for by an auto bid of some kind. That leaves the 9 seed and the 10 seed as the 2 seeds that are still up for grabs here. Now, I don't want to call these at-large seeds yet, Clinton, because based on conference championship results this weekend, we could have a bid thief situation. That comes down to let's operate under the assumption that last week's rankings stay static. So that would be Notre Dame at 9, Alabama at 10, BYU at 11, and Miami at 12. There is a situation where Notre Dame, despite being ranked number 9 going into the weekend, gets left out of the playoff because they get jumped by Alabama winning the SEC title game against Georgia, thus getting an auto bid. They have to be in the field. Georgia will not fall behind Notre Dame in that scenario. And BYU beating Texas Tech, which we kind of already talked about a little bit. BYU would jump Notre Dame. They have to be in the field as an auto bid. Texas Tech, currently at number 5, would not fall behind Notre Dame in that instance. That is how you end up with neither Notre Dame or Miami in the playoff field. So if you're a fan of, well, I guess that depends on the rankings. If you are a Notre Dame fan and your team remains at number 9 ahead of those two teams, you will be watching those two games closely, because if both of those results go against you, you're out of the playoff. Now, the other interesting thing that I am looking for this week is, Clinton, what do they do with the Notre Dame and Miami debate? I am not entirely convinced that this is settled, even though Hunter Yurachek, the committee chair, said last week that Notre Dame and Miami were in the same comparison pool and they still felt that Notre Dame was the better team. We have now a full set of data. Miami's coming off a big win against a previously ranked Pitt team. They've played well the last couple of weeks. Is that enough to jump Miami over a Notre Dame team who has still played well, again, and not against the best competition? That is going to be, I think, the most important thing to watch this weekend, because last year the committee showed, one, that they wouldn't punish conference championship game losers. We'll get to that here in a second. But they also showed that if you aren't playing on the final weekend, your ranking would not move in respect to other teams that were also not playing. So one scenario I saw was, all right, well, what if Bama wins the SEC title game, but BYU loses? So then Bama jumps Notre Dame, and now Notre Dame and Miami are back-to-back. Would they then invoke head-to-head there? The counter to that would be, I don't understand how you would then invoke head-to-head for the last at-large spot when you had no additional data points between those two teams.
I think they could just do whatever they want, Ryan.
Well, that's also the
I don't think they care.
That's the other aspect, is they've shown that they just kind of make shit up as they go. However, if one is ahead of the other this week, I feel confident in saying that will hold true next week as well, regardless of what happens with the SEC and Big 12 title games.
Yeah, I agree. We were talking about this at work today. If you hold Notre Dame and Miami to essentially even, then I think you should probably lean with the head-to-head. I think Notre Dame is probably the better team right now, but if the committee's going to sit here and tell you they're neck and neck, essentially, if they were to do that, then you're going to have to go with the head-to-head win, I feel like. Otherwise, we think people are going to bitch because these other teams are left out. It's going to be even worse, and then you're going to get more of this. Texas is going to argue it. Miami's going to argue it. Why are we playing these games if it doesn't matter head-to-head? And there are all kinds of things that go into this that are beyond your and I's knowledge, but if they want to boil it simply down that these two are even, and here's head-to-head, but we're still going to go Notre Dame, they're going to have a lot of questions to answer on that. And again, the committee has proved every year they'll do whatever the hell they want. Their stuff changes week to week. It doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, they make the rankings and then they backfill the rationale to justify it.
Yep. So who knows? I say somehow, whatever the magic, get one team at 8 and one team at 9, and let's let them square off again.
Well, here, can I give you my conspiratorial take?
Mm-hmm.
What I think is going to this is not what I think is going to happen. What would probably be the cleanest way to decide this is, given that you have Miami coming off of a win against a previously ranked team. Again, I get Pitt's not going to be ranked anymore. You have a situation where Alabama did not look great against a sub-500 Auburn team last week. You have a situation where BYU was down 14 points in the first quarter against a garbage UCF team. If you are the committee, you have ammunition to say, we think that the way Miami has been playing over the last month has allowed them, in our minds, to be better suited for playoff participation than BYU and Alabama. You jump them over those two teams. Well, we're now comparing them directly to Notre Dame. We feel like they are more or less the same team. We are invoking head-to-head. We are moving Miami ahead of Notre Dame. So then you have rankings as Miami 9, Notre Dame 10, Alabama 11, and BYU 12. What you do in that situation, if you are the committee, is you are saying we think we think Miami and Notre Dame are both playoff teams. We have them in our playoff field. And what you've done is you've created a true win and in and lose and out situation for Alabama and BYU. So you don't have to sit there if Alabama loses to Georgia or BYU loses to Texas Tech and figure, well, shit, we can't punish these conference championship game losers, because you wouldn't be punishing them because they weren't in your field anyway. But if one of them wins, they get in the field over Notre Dame. And then if both of them win, they get in over Notre Dame and Miami. And you sit there, you shrug your shoulders and say, look, we thought these were both playoff teams, but how the breaks went is we had 4 teams who were ranked outside of our top 10 who got auto bids. Therefore, that's just the breaks. And you tip your cap and you move on. That,
And
to
you
me, would
put
be the
Notre
cleanest way.
Dame versus Miami in a bowl game.
You can play them in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Who gives a shit?
Love the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
But that would, to me, that would be the cleanest way to deal with it if you're trying to limit controversy, if you're the committee, which I don't know that's necessarily their edict. You kind of hit the nail on the head. They very much make this shit up as they go, and the rules change week to week, and sometimes there's not even rationale for it. It's just, we think this team is better, and these are the datas that we're going to use to justify it. Before we kind of break on this, I do want to go on my tangent about this debate at the back end of the playoff field before we sign off for the night, because this has been something I've been thinking about for, it hasn't really been that long, today, more or less. I don't remember if I said it on this show or if I said it to you in conversation before we did this show, or I said it to someone else in conversation, but when we officially got word that expansion to 12 was going to happen, my thought process was, because people would say like, oh, well, you thought the debate over who's getting into the 14 field was tiresome. It's going to be tiresome when we're debating teams for the 10th, 11th, and 12th spots. And my take on that was always, I don't care, because by and large, more often than not, those are teams that are placeholders. They're not going to win the national title. And now I think it's kind of funny we're having this debate about 2 teams in Notre Dame and Miami who I think could legitimately win a national title this year. But we're still talking about back half of the field teams, 4 at-large spots, which means that you didn't do enough on the field to make me feel sorry for you, whatever happens. If you lose 2 games, you have forfeited your right to complain about your ranking because you didn't take care of your business on the field. You have left your fate into the hands of a boardroom, and you're going to sit there and complain about how you were being treated unfairly because you won this game, or you did this, or you did that. You know what you should do to counter that? You shouldn't lose to fucking SMU as a 9.5-point favorite. You shouldn't give up 42 points to Texas A&M when you can't stop a goddamn nosebleed. That's it. Like, don't take care of what you can on the field, and this doesn't become an issue. I have no sympathy, and I'm talking about my own team here too, man. Like, I have no sympathy for these teams in this debate because you had an opportunity to handle your business and leave no doubt, and you didn't do that. Like, I get, like, every single one of these teams has a gripe. Every single one of these teams, I think, has a legitimate gripe if they get left out of the field. But again, if you did more on the field, it wouldn't be an issue. Like, look at Notre Dame. You knew, of all the changes you had coming in the offseason, new defensive coordinator, you're losing your best player on defense, new quarterback, yada, yada, yada. You knew that your first 2 games of the season were going to be your most difficult test, and you did not have your defense ready to play. Full stop. They couldn't stop a goddamn nosebleed against Texas A&M. They could have had me running go routes out there, and we would have, you throwing me the ball, and we would have figured out a way to get 7 points on them. It was pathetic. Get your shit together. And they were winning the game with 2 minutes left. And you let Marcel Reed go 85 yards on you in a minute and a half. Marcel Reed has not been good the rest of this year. He's been fine. That's being a little overdramatic. You let him go 85 yards on you. You gave up a 4th and 10 touchdown pass that the guy didn't even see half the way. He said he lost it in the lights. Make a stop. You win that game, we're not having this discussion right now. I think the funniest thing about this, Clinton, is if that holding on that 4th down play gets called and Notre Dame beats Texas A&M, not only is Notre Dame firmly in the field right now, but Miami's probably in over Texas A&M too, if you want to talk about weird butterfly effects. Let's talk about Miami. You beat Notre Dame. That is a fact. You want to evoke the head-to-head to say that you belong in the field over Notre Dame. That's fine. That's a fair argument. You know what you did that Notre Dame didn't do? You lost to 2 crappy teams in a crappy conference that's so crappy that we're sitting here talking about your conference champion not even getting into the field as an auto bid. You lost to 2 teams in that shitty conference that aren't even playing for the conference title game, and neither are you. You play in a terrible conference that no one respects, And you're sitting here shocked that you lost 2 games in that conference, and people say, we don't really think this team's actually that good. Beat teams you should beat, and you wouldn't be in this situation. I think the team that has the most to gripe about would be BYU if they get left out. They've lost 1 game in a power conference. That sucks. I get their gripe. However, you know that no one respects the Big 12. The Big 12 is not a respected conference, more so than the ACC, not on the same level as the Big 10 and the SEC. And despite that, you scheduled a non-conference schedule of Portland State, Stanford, and ECU. That's a terrible non-conference schedule. You can't do the Indiana when you don't have a Big 10 schedule to back you, as bad as Indiana's Big 10 schedule was last year. You have 1 good win this year against a Utah team that is still getting run on by the state of Kansas right now. That's not a win that's aged particularly well, even though they are only a 2-loss team. You've played 1 team all year that is a playoff peer, and you got blown off the field. How can you sit there and be mad when people are looking at you and saying, we've seen you play a team that you would play in the playoff, and we're not really jazzed to see that again? Don't get your ass kicked in your only game of consequence this year, and then you don't have to worry about people leaving you out of the field. And you still have a way to play, you still have a chance to play your way in. Like, you're not completely out of this. You have your fate in your own hands still, despite where you are in the rankings. That's something to be said. There's something to be said for that. Alabama, same thing. You have your fate in your own hands. You win this weekend, you leave no doubt. You beat Georgia again. That's fantastic. You also lost on the opening weekend to a god-awful Florida State team. Clinton, that loss to Florida State is almost as bad as Notre Dame's loss to NIU last year. And everyone after that game said, well, they might not even be a playoff team right now, but if they lose again, they're definitely out. And here Alabama is with that shitty loss hanging over their neck. They lost to an Oklahoma team that couldn't move the ball against LSU. And you're sitting here, you're mad that you're on the bubble. Don't lose to a shitty Florida State team, man. And you remove all that. Texas, don't even get me fucking started on Texas.
They should be in, Ryan.
Lost to Florida. Oh my God! Every year with the SEC, I swear to God, well, we're not going to schedule these tough games because they don't help us. You lost to Florida. Yep. Don't lose to Florida.
It wasn't the Ohio State loss that cost you.
No.
Which they keep saying, well, if we had scheduled Rice, well, no, it wasn't the Ohio State loss that's hurting you. It's the Florida loss that's hurting you. Nobody is
gloss over it. I will have so much respect for the first coach who comes out and says, you know what? For the most part, I really loved our body of work this year, but you know what? We didn't play good enough against a team that we should have beaten, and I understand that's why we're probably going to be on the outside looking in.
Yep.
That's why. That is literally the reason.
Nobody is arguing your loss to Ohio State keeping you out, Texas. It is your loss to Florida. That is Alabama last year. Nobody was arguing Alabama last year against their tough conference games. It was their loss to Oklahoma, who was horrific last year. It kept them out of the playoff. South Carolina, I'm sure, had a bad loss in there. They were 3 losses. Same with Ole Miss. You're not getting, and this is why I think they're going to push 24. You know they're going to want it. Greg Sankey's going to sign on that dotted line for 24 when Alabama loses and gets left out. Vanderbilt gets left out. Texas gets left out. All these motherfuckers are greedy, and they're going to put in for this, and we're going to have 24. Well, and then essentially at some point we're going to start bitching because teams 25, 26, 27, 28 didn't make it with 4 losses.
Well, here the funny thing, too, is they're going to bitch about it, and if Alabama wins this weekend, they're definitively getting 5 teams into the playoff.
Yep.
And I'm not convinced that 3, possibly 4 of those teams are even good.
Yep. This is what makes the rankings fun tomorrow night. I'm still not going to watch.
No, I will not watch.
It makes it fun tomorrow night to see where everything falls because you mentioned the past few years, if you don't play, you don't typically change. You can't control your own destiny. Bama and BYU, man, they're the holders of the cards here. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with both of them because BYU is not getting in with a loss. Even if somehow they're in position, they're not getting in. And Alabama, I think, is out with a loss.
Well, that's the other
We're going to argue because, well, you're in your conference champion, you should be in. But that's your 3rd loss. How do you argue that you're in when you have 3 losses?
Well, I think that's the other fascinating thing to see, too, is with Alabama's play. If they keep the rankings static and Alabama is 10th behind Notre Dame but ahead of Miami, if BYU loses and Alabama loses, does Alabama stay at 10 or do they fall down and let Miami in? That's partially why I think that the committee might put Miami above all of them, just so they don't have to deal with it. But that would be, I'm fascinated if that's the scenario that plays out, that Alabama is in the field as of tomorrow night. What would happen if they lost?
Yeah.
That would be fascinating to see, because I guarantee you, if Alabama's at 10, they lose the conference championship game. Let's say it's like a 10-point game, not like particularly close, but not a blowout. And then the committee moves them out. Greg Sankey will have conference championship games canceled before Christmas if that happens.
Yep, absolutely, I agree. It gets spicy. We'll, of course, we'll touch on it Thursday before we do our Ohio State Indiana dive. We'll talk on the rankings because they'll be really important. And then we've essentially got a Heisman to decide for Saturday as well between San and Mendoza. You get a Big Ten champ, the number 1 seed in the playoff, and a Heisman winner from that game, most likely.
Unless they both suck, and then it's Diego Pavia.
Wouldn't that be something?
That would be crazy.
Diego can have his Heisman and sit at home, not in the playoffs. So
something tells me that I don't think he would care all that much.
No.
Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, that's it for us tonight. I can't talk. We'll be back 9 p.m. Eastern Thursday, breaking down the Big Ten title game, doing pickup of all the conference title games, touching on the playoff rankings. We'll have a pretty good idea of what the playoff field is, if not the specific matchups quite yet. But we'll talk to you guys Thursday night. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you then.
See you.